What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. This is Cam. Welcome to TWA Motorsports. Today, guys, we are continuing the progress on the Trans Am. In the last video, as a matter of fact, you can see we've still got it hooked up, but we bled the brakes. Well, we didn't really bleed the brakes, but we checked pressure for leaks. We put the new K-member in. We got the new brake lines ran. So far, so good. But in today's video, we've got to get some parts off this. I actually think I have this kit sold. And so in order to sell it, we obviously got to take it off. So what we are going to try to get accomplished today, as a matter of fact, we are getting it accomplished. We've got to get the oil pan off. We've got to get the K-member off. We've got to get the turbos off. Yeah, we got a lot to do. So here's where I think we're going to start. I think I'm going to go ahead. We're going to get all the spark plug wires off. I think, guys, because of the way it's out of the car, I don't think I'll have any issue as far as like leaving the spark plugs in, or at least I don't think so, but we'll give it a shot. Let's get started. Next thing we need to do is get the dipstick out, which shouldn't be super tight. Just a 15 millimeter. And then I'm gonna make sure my oil lines are disconnected. I won't be able to show you guys that. They tee off on the, what is that, the passenger side? Driver's side over there, right above where the oil pan bolts on. I'm gonna get that loosened up, and then we'll go through and crack loose all of these header bolts. And like I said, I'm hoping I can just lift this thing out of the way, which I think I'll be able to. Let's get this guy out of here. I got all the lines disconnected that I was telling you I couldn't show you. So now we need to take, these are 12-point because they're ARP. We're gonna take these out, but I'm gonna have him help me because I still got the oil line hooked up down here. So he'll help sneak this out of the way. But I think, guys, we can just take these guys out and get down, to the last one, and then hopefully be able to get it loose, or at least that's the plan. Now that we got manifolds out of the way, I went ahead and put some tape over that just to cover it, just in case anything were to fall in it. We need to take our starter out that's unique to this kit. I don't remember what size this is, guys. 8 millimeter. So we'll take those two bolts out, get the starter out of the way. I've already got it unhooked, even though it looks like it's still hooked up. And then I think we're gonna have to hook it up to an engine hoist to get our oil pan off and our K-member. Once the starter's off, I think, guys, I'm pretty sure I can get this out of the front, the K-member, I mean, because this thing's setting on the oil pan. Now, obviously, we're gonna have to get it open or up off the ground to get the oil pan off, but I'm not really concerned about that right this second. What I do want to get off, though, is let's get these motor mounts off. And I'm just using what I call an all-16ths, because this thing is, I want to say it's like 15/16 or 1 inch or something crazy. But there's no pressure on this other than the weight, obviously the weight of the engine. But once I get this loose on both sides, we'll take the K-member, we'll just slide it out the front, and then we'll grab our, I think those are 15s and 13s to get the motor mounts off. Next thing we need to do to get this off is I've got a replacement oil pan right there. We're gonna have to get the old one off. Now the new one, guys, I'll list this part number in the description or a link to it. The new one actually comes with a new gasket and oil drain plug, the baffle on the inside, the piece here on the side with a new gasket, and then the oil sensor or oil level right there. So literally we're just taking one off, putting the other on. Now remember, we're gonna put silicone in the 4 corners, make sure we don't have any leaks. But I'm gonna whip this on and off really quick because I don't love the way I have it suspended. It's just the best way I could do it at the time. So let me get this old one off. We'll get the new one on, and then I think we'll have everything off we need off. You can see the old oil pan sitting over there, or the one that goes with the turbos, and the new one is bolted on, guys. So I didn't show you this, but I cleaned out the corners. Obviously, we put a bead of silicone in all 4 corners where they meet the front and rear covers. It's a great idea. I think it needs to be done anytime you do this. You're going to see that recommended by anybody who puts one of these on. The other thing is I just went back and forth. So starting in the middle to the other side, when I was torquing it down, there's already a gasket installed. So, and it's riveted to the pan. That's the way the factory set that up. I didn't have that one riveted. I generally don't rivet them back if I replace them. But anyway, started over here in the middle, 18 foot-pounds, opposite side 18, just similar to you'd bolt down a head. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It's just the way I've always done it. So just working our way from the middle back. 18 foot-pounds on all the little ones. The long ones in the back, however, so the ones that go in the very back into the rear cover, those go to 106 inch-pounds. So do not screw that up. But now that we've got that accomplished, I could set this thing back down for now and, well, at least feel comfortable about having that stuff removed. And then we're just waiting on a few new pieces to come in, and we'll continue this, I guess, rebuild of sorts. So here's where we're at. I noticed when I was bleeding, well, I say bleeding, when I was putting pressure on this line right here, guys, the one that comes out of the line lock for the front brakes and the one we teed off with here, this guy here was leaking a little bit on the top side and one of my joints. So I'm going to replace that. And I'm thinking I'm actually going to bend a new line here out of that Nico stuff. I know it's going to be gold, which I don't love, but I guess I could put some paint on it if I hated it. But this is a really big stretch for this line. And so I want to do two things. I want to remake it, but I'm going to let it set overnight and kind of drip out. I did pull out as much as I could. And so we've got to start there. And even when I unhook it here, I'll probably put a cup or something under it just to drain into. I don't want it on the paint. And I used a couple zip ties here to lock this in, so I'm gonna have to cut that out. But before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and release the suspension. So we're gonna take the spindles off. I'm gonna take the lines off of the calipers. Of course, they're gonna leak. I may bag those. And then once we do that, I can take the K-member out. We're good there. And guys, I can move it over and hopefully bolt it to the actual engine here. So I got the factory 18s out of the back, the 5/8 bolts, the whole K-member's out. So a couple things we need to do. First off, guys, I need to reverse the way those bolts are in the back. So the back A-arm mount, those need to go through the bottom. The head needs to be on the top, both sides. So I'm gonna do that off camera. But before we get this thing hooked up, which is our next step, well, we have nothing to hook to because the old motor mounts off the turbo stuff mounted directly to this, and then our bushing was down at the bottom. Well, these take the factory style mounts. So I just ordered a new set of factory mounts, and they are side specific. I don't remember which one. I think this goes down. Yeah, these little tab deals, these guys here go down, I believe. You can always test them in this, but I believe this is how it goes, and I'll show you. Oh, I guess it makes sense to show you here. No, I take that back. It goes like this. Right? I believe that's it, guys. Yep, that's it. So hopefully that makes sense. I guess these face up, and they, I believe they're made the same on both sides. Yeah, you can see I've already kind of loosely fit that one on, but I wanted to, I'll torque these down at some point, but I want to make sure everything fits before we go torquing everything down. So I'm just going to run them up snug for now. Then we'll get the K-member over here after I reverse those bolts and see if we can stab it in. I now have the K-member under there. Just kind of slid it up on one side, then the other, and you can see we have our motor mounts mounted. It's in there. So now what I need to do is I need to transfer it off my wooden blocks back onto my little dollies to get under the car. So I'm gonna lift it back up, and then this guy right here, you're gonna help me, right?
Yeah.
He's gonna help me push that underneath there once we get this lifted up. I did have to take the dipstick out. I haven't torqued any of the torque specs on the motor mounts or the actual motor mount bolts, the big long ones that go through. We are using the factory bolts there, but I'm gonna put my dipstick tube back in to make sure we don't get any junk in it, and we'll worry about torquing it here after a while. Well, here we are a couple days later. I actually got some headers. So here's the situation, guys. I got some Speed Engineering inch and 7/8. It is not the preference that I wanted to go with on this. I really, really wanted to go with a American Racing or a Cook's, but here's the situation with both of those manufacturers. They are out 8 to 10 weeks to build a set of these. They do not keep them on the shelf anymore. So I found one set of Cooks, but they came with catalytic converters. I didn't want that, and I didn't want to spend more to have that. And they only sold it as a kit. You couldn't just buy the headers and the Y pipe separate. It's like a kit that they have pre-assembled or whatnot. But either way, I didn't want to do that. And so this is what I decided to go with. Down the road, we may switch out to a set of Cooks. I think Cooks and American Racing, guys, are a better quality. Nothing wrong with this, so we'll just have to see. I had an issue with the last Y pipe from Speed Engineering kind of hitting on the bottom of the floor. If that's the issue here, we may either try to figure something out, or we may just swap headers altogether. But I want to get this motor in the car, and so this was my only way of doing it relatively quickly without waiting another 10 weeks and putting this thing on the back burner. Now, obviously it's not going to run today, but it's going to run before 10 weeks, or at least so I'm hoping. So let's open these things up. We'll take a look at them and see if we can get them installed. I do need to go ahead and torque down the bolts for the engine mounts, and then the long bolts that go through. I figured we'd go ahead and torque those down when we had access to them instead of trying to get around the header. And then obviously, guys, when we put the header up in there, we need to get, I put the dipstick tube back in there just to keep junk out of the oil pan, but we'll need to do that as well. So let's open these up and see what we can get started on. So 37 foot-pounds are what these guys go to, the clamshell to the actual block itself. So let's get that done. Now that we got those to 37 on both sides, we need to do 70, or at least that's what I found is the proper torque spec for the through bolt. It's a little bit different on the other one, but let's get this one at 70. Then we'll grab the headers. They come with some cheap gaskets. I don't use those, guys. I use the stock GM gasket. So we'll put those in place and get the ARP studs started, or studs, they're actually bolts. Get those started with the new GM gaskets. You want to talk about the easiest header install ever, you know, pull everything out of the way and then motor out of the car, guys. That's the easiest way to install headers. All right, we've got these in. So we're going to run these down. I think it's 11. I'm going to double check, but I'm pretty sure it's 11, starting from the center, working our way out. You can see I've got my GM gasket in there. So 11, working our way from the center out, and then 18, the final pass. That thing bolted into place. I went ahead and put my dipstick tube back in. I torqued it to 18 as well. And I was right, guys. 11 foot-pounds is the first pass, 18 on the second. Got it in there. Got the dipstick in. 18 foot-pounds on it is what I did. And guys, it fits really well. No interferences with the K-member or the engine or the transmission or anything like that. I know this is always a close spot right here for your O2 sensor, but guys, I didn't even talk about these headers. So like I said, in the past, I've had issues with the Y pipe fitting. I've never really had issues. I will say I had these 1.7/8" on this car back when I first bought it, and I had to clearance a little bit on the K-member, the factory K-member. Obviously there's a lot less here because of, well, it's an aftermarket K-member, but I worked around it. And so we'll just have to see when we get the motor up in there if there's any clearance issues with the floor. I don't foresee there being a problem. They've had enough time to kind of adjust the way they make these. But the reason I went with these and not some other brand that I could get a hold of, like a Hooker or who else makes them? I think like QuickTime maybe. Anyway, these are stainless, right? So QuickTime makes a stainless, but they only make 1 3/4. This is 1 7/8. They do have velocity spikes now, so if you look in here, they do come with velocity spikes. They're a two-piece, or they're not a one-piece tube design, so there is a seam in them, which a lot of people don't like. I've never had an issue with these guys. I've ran them on several things, but like I said, if I could have gotten a Cooks or an American Racing, that's what I would have done. But all in all, they're a pretty decent weld job. Flanges are nice and sturdy and thick. No real issues, right? And they're polished, they look nice. And like I said, if we decide we want to go with something else, we can down the road. I opted for the Y pipe. We're not going to get into that in this video because we're a ways from that part. I don't want the Y pipe hanging off this as we're going up in the car. But let's get this other one on and get it torqued down, and then we'll see where we're going to go next. Next thing I'm going to do while we're here is go ahead and put the O2 sensors in. Now I opted to get some Bosch. I've just had really good luck with these guys. I'll try to list this in the description as well, but buy a good O2 sensor or reuse your stock ones if they're good. It's just a good time, in my opinion, to replace them. We're going to go ahead and thread those in and tighten them up, hand tight, or as tight as we can get them with the 7/8 wrench. And then we got some surprises for up top.